give you a chance to kind of have someone create it with you and to practice with us. So that's kind of where we're at today. So what we're looking to do is this is the second in a 3-part webinar series. Some of you may have been on part 1 of the webinar series, which really gives you an overview of the uncertainty advantage. And so the goal is to really leave you with practical tips and ideas and techniques on how do you lead through these nutty, crazy, unprecedented times. And specifically, what we're going to do today in today's webinar, again, this is 2 of 3, is how do you sort of answer the call for leadership that arises in these really challenging times. So with uncertainty, right, we've all got an opportunity at any moment, but also especially in uncertainty, to really choose how are you going to show up, right? How are you actually going to show up when you know what is hitting the fan and everyone's stressed out, right? You actually get to choose. And the good news is you don't actually have to do it alone, right? So today you're going to learn how to actually turn the challenges into opportunity and coach your team to do the same, right? How do you tap your network? How do you generate new ideas and gain insights to really get help from what we term your inner circle? And it also, as I mentioned, comes with that complimentary access to all of the whole uncertainty toolkits that, for you and your team. So one little tip, actually, I forgot to share at the beginning. So you may be in gallery view on Zoom. There's not a lot of folks on video. You're welcome to be on video, but if you're not on video or you prefer not to, some people find it useful to go in speaker view, which unfortunately for you, that means you have to look at my face, which, isn't going to be the most pleasant experience, but at least you're not looking at a bunch of blank screens. So that's another thing. Part of today as well is we're also going to give you a chance to interact in the chat. Okay, going to give you a chance to interact in the chat. So don't just have it be a sit back. We're going to be asking you questions. You're actually going to get to take on an area of your world right now where you're wrestling and dealing with a little bit of uncertainty. So sort of giving that a bit of a mull over as we kind of jump into the conversation. So let's get started. So what does it really look like out there these days? So here's some things. If you're on the first webinar, this is the one slide that's the same as the previous one. So right now in today's uncertain times, like stress and anxiety are a little higher than they were before. Priorities are shifting and unclear. Your personal life is interrupting your work life and vice versa. Team members are physically distanced. Like, oh yeah, oh right, who is that? Are you actually doing the work over there? So we got that. We're trying to manage and kind of deal with that, right? And in that space, it's often easier to disengage and to get, to have that. I had one client talk to me about, how did she say it? She said, drowning is a quiet death. And I went, ooh, that's kind of creepy. But she says, that's what happens right now in today's times when we're not on video or whatever it is, we're not connected. We can be behind and it's quiet, right? It's quiet over here. And so part of the day is how do we actually break through that and get into sort of greater levels of engagement. And of course, managers aren't trained to deal with and manage uncertainty, right? So how do we actually support you in dealing with it and then in turn support people that may report to you? So, and it doesn't help, of course, at the same time, right, when we've got all this, is that we are hardwired for control. So given that's kind of the world that's going on, we're also hardwired to want and need this sort of sense of control. And so in prehistoric times, right, way back in our caveman days, right, we've been conditioned to believe that control equals safety. Control equals safety. Right? But right now, we don't have to worry about our physical safety for the most part, thank goodness, in today's environment. But your chances of survival basically are higher when you can control your environment. But here's the thing. We know, you guys know you can't control everything. And yet, we still freak out, right? When things change, we still have it. When it's a big change, we still have that experience of what the heck? Right? Intellectually, we get that we can't control everything, but at the same time, we sort of have the same experience that's universal to all of us. So in times of uncertainty, what happens is what we're missing is the predictable nature of our daily lives and work. We miss the ability to predict what it is that's actually happening. And so predictability gives us a perceived sense of control. If you can predict it, you can plan for it. You look up your weather app. Okay, I can wear a warm coat on this particular day, right? We love the fact that we can kind of control things. So with that kind of stuff, so when we know what's coming, there's less risk, right? Less perceived risk. We think we feel safer and we feel like we're set up more for success. So what do you guys think happens when predictability disappears? We freak out, right? There's that element of like, what the heck, or oh no, or da-da-da, or that anxiety in us rises. And so if you weren't with us in the first webinar, make sure you sign up for the video series and watch video 1. We're not going to go over that again, but the very first step in the process of when you're dealing with change is to embrace being a little, unsettled. Some of you may be freaking out about some stuff. Maybe you may be just a little bit unsettled, anywhere on that whole scale. But to actually embrace that as the starting point to really dealing with uncertainty is giving yourself permission that it's okay to feel that way, right? And so that's the first video. We won't go through that anymore, but that's there for you as a resource. So now let's start engaging with this key question, right? With actually this next key question, right? So how do we actually get our power back? When things are all up in the air, when things are going on, how do we actually get our power back when predictability is diminishing or disappeared? How do we do this? So the first thing is to actually, when we look at this, the first thing is to get that our perception of control is directly correlated to your ability to make choices. If you feel like you don't have a choice in the matter, then we have this experience of, I don't have any control, right? The weather, it's like, oh, so someone from Montreal is saying it's cloudy out there. It's like, I don't have any choice about it being cloudy or not, right? So I don't feel like I have control, which is, you have control of the weather. So the peril of uncertainty is that we often don't know what our choices are. We often miss what our choices are, or we feel like we don't have any say in how things are actually going to go. So how do we actually do this, right? How do we actually do this? What do we do about this scenario? So let me pull onto the next slide here. So when decisions are being made outside you. Yeah.
Hi, Jamie. Sorry to interrupt. On our end, the slides aren't moving.
They're not moving at all?
No. So.
Okay. Well, there we go. This is good to know. This is good to know. So I'm going to stop sharing. It says on my end it's sharing, but I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share again.
All right.
Okay. Well, my goodness. So let's try this again.
Okay.
Are you guys seeing the slides now?
Okay. So your front page.
Yep. So you're seeing that first slide.
The first slide. Yeah.
You see the next slide? Uncertainty advantage.
Yeah. Now we're there.
Okay. So the slides are moving now. That's weird.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Okay, we're good.
So there we go. So there we go. We're good. But all the testing in the world we did earlier, and then, go figure, right? So apologies for that, guys. You're listening to me prattle on and not be able to see the slides. Welcome to the world of technology and dealing with uncertainty, right? There you go. So this is the uncertainty advantage piece that I talked about earlier. And I'll just sort of bomb through some of these other pieces. What we're going to do today. And these are all the things at uncertain times that you actually, obviously, we're all experiencing. And so we're hardwired for control. So this is where we're at now. So thanks, Sheena. I don't know what happened there. I'm like sharing my slides. I don't know why I didn't show. Okay, so here we go. So how do we actually get our power back, right? How do we actually do this when everything is, we feel like we can't control anything? So this is our perception of control piece where we were a moment ago. So how do we actually say, what do we actually do with this, right? When decisions are being made, when decisions are being made for you as opposed to by you, right? So many of us are in situations where decisions are actually made for us versus by us. There's a reorg that's happening. There is, your job hours have changed, your day schooling kids, whatever happens to be. So here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to give you 60 seconds or so right now, because I want this to be practical for you as opposed to some talking head just sprouting off about whatever, right? What I want you to do is I want you to think about, I'm going to give you 60 seconds or so and come up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. What are some areas where decisions have actually been made, for you right now? Like, where are some decisions being made for you? You can't visit people the same way, as an example, right? Like, my 25th wedding anniversary is this year and we can't go on a trip, right? I can't be in the office with my team, right? The pandemic had a massive impact. We're in a training business in a pandemic. You think that had an impact? Yeah, definitely, right? So this is some areas where I don't actually get to make choices. I don't feel like I have the opportunity to make choices. So take a moment for yourself. I'll give you 60 seconds or so. what are a number of areas where you feel like the choices are being made for you? Take a moment. Where are decisions not being made, but decisions being made for you, not by you? And it's kind of annoying or frustrating or depleting. Okay, so you may have a few there, and so some of you already started doing this. Awesome. So start, if you're willing. I'd like you to pick one of those areas and throw it in the chat. You guys have already started doing it. Amazing. So very good. Here they come. Awesome. I get it, Jane. Yeah. Lockdown, opening. Yeah. The yo-yo of it all, Penny. Yeah, really good. Reduced budget, curfew. Yeah, all these pieces, working from home, right? Recruitment virtually. So these are all things, right? So, okay, so I want you to bring that lens to the conversation, right? So that may be the area, and then maybe you may have 5 areas. It's probably 30 or more, or whatever it is. I think you just sort of pick an area and have that in your mind as we kind of go through this conversation today. So you actually walk out with some practical applications around an area that's important to you. So if we think about this, you've got whatever area that you pick, whether it's working from home or lockdown or whatever it is. So when that's the case, there are really actually 2 steps you can take to really begin to regain some power in the conversation. So the first step is to actually notice, right, that that's an area that you're kind of disappointed by, annoyed by, wish were different, whatever it happens to be. And this takes us back to the very first webinar in January. And back to video 1 and video 2 of the Uncertainty Toolkit of that whole 5-part series that we have. So this is about starting to notice your shoulds, right? Notice your should. So I shouldn't be working from home. I should, insert I shouldn't in front of everything that's in the chat. I shouldn't have a reduced budget. I shouldn't have the lockdown opening, lockdown yo-yo that's going on. I shouldn't. Those are all kind of things that are there for us. There's a standard there for us that we wish were different. And so as long as we have this, like these expectations, we're going to continue to ride the uncertainty and not be in a space of being powerful in it. And so as long as your mindset's in the space of things should be different, you're going to find yourself resisting the way it is. And remember, whatever you resist persists, right? If I resist, video calls might be one of mine. It's like, oh, video calls, right? The more we resist video calls, the more the annoyance of the calls is going to be there for us, as opposed to embracing it in some way. So this step is really a reminder of embracing your freak out, stop shooting on yourself that we did in session 1. So the next part we're going to go to here is around focus on the choices that you can make. Actually start focusing on the choices that you can make in this scenario, right? So now the thing about this is it's not always obvious. Your choices aren't always obvious. So I invite you to consider that you actually have more choices available to you than you might think. Right. So I'm gonna ask a question. You guys are gonna throw it out in the chat right now. So you may be in a family, you may be single, whatever it is. So I'm gonna throw a question out to the chat. So an area where we didn't think we had many choices, right? So here's something I'm gonna throw a question out to you, right? So oftentimes we don't think we have lots of options. So how did you keep your family sane? How do you keep yourself sane? When you can't go and socialize with others in their homes. Right? If you're single, how did you stay connected with others, right? So what are some choices that you have made that were unpredictable, that were unforeseen 12 months ago on how you would have connected with others or how you keep your family sane? So throw it in the chat. How did you actually do this? What's one or more strategies that you took that got you to where you are? How did you keep sane? Nice, Penny. Virtual dinners, love it. Planning self-care, like walking on the beach, Jeff. Nice. Not that you said that there. Sending notes in the email. WhatsApp, very good. Lots more time in nature. I took on snowshoeing, for those who might not have seen that at the very beginning. Online yoga practice. Climbing stairs in my partner's condo building for cardio. Come on, that's awesome. Right? Make a point to connect with my colleagues during breaks, staying positive, FaceTime calls with friends. I got my mother on Zoom. Like that was this is the amazing human being. It took me an hour to teach her how to text on her iPhone. Like just to press the button was a big thing. And she's on Zoom. Like that was not predictable, right? Spending time with horses, right? So you look at all these things, right? So when we look at these scenarios, like what ends up happening is that there's often more options than we think when we start taking a closer look at our scenario. And so when we look at this, when you look at the area that you chose, right, that's in the way for you, dealing with a yo-yo or whatever it happens to be, right, one thing to start thinking about, what options do you have there, right? What options do you have to start dealing with that particular area? So again, a part of you giving you a chance to take a look. So I'll give you a moment to do that, just give you a moment. What options, what choices can you make in the area that you chose that perhaps you haven't made or haven't flexed in a while? Take a moment and capture those for yourself, whatever area you chose. Okay, very good. And you may put these in the chat, you may not, depending on what it is that's going on for you, but lots of like this whole thing about, we got a horses thing going on here. This is awesome, right? All these horses things are showing up. I'm gonna get some more time with the horses. That's fantastic. So part of it, so this whole idea about now focusing on the choices that we can actually make is one of the key things we really want to start focusing on. So let's take a look then at how we move on beyond this. How do we start getting closer to control? So anytime you're in an uncertain environment or a disempowering situation, you've got three questions you can really ask yourself to get closer to regaining control, regaining your sense of power, regaining your sense of ability to do something about the scenario. So one of the first questions to ask is, what am I actually worried? What am I actually frustrated about? What am I actually worried about? And asking this question goes back to that step one we talked about in the video series, the things that you're resisting, right? Those particular elements. And one of the things to think about whenever you're dealing with a situation you can't control, you only really have three options. This isn't in the slide. You only really have three options. You can either change the situation, you can accept the situation, or you can leave the situation. Those are your three options. That's all you got, right, at the end of the day. And so one of these things, when you look at the next question here, so what am I worried? What am I actually frustrated about? The second question is, what is out of my control, right? This is what you need to accept. Where can you actually ride the wave instead of just sort of railing against, as we talked about in the very first webinar, right? So what is out of my control? And the second part of it is like, what decisions can I make that are in my control, right? What can I actually control? So think broadly, look at your bigger environment. When you think about timelines, conversations, your team tasks, the actions that you can actually take, right? When you look at this, what can I actually do? Now, sometimes it's a real struggle to answer that last question. When you go, it's a pandemic, like I can only control so much, right? You might feel like you don't have many options, or there's nothing that your team can do. Like, hey, our budget was cut, right? Like, what are kind of your options, right? And that's a tough spot to be in. But even then, there's one choice that you can make. There's one choice. You always have a final choice to make. And this is the final choice, right? The ultimate, we call it actually the ultimate choice. So in that scenario where it's like, there's actually nothing I can do about this scenario. We've got curfew, we've got budget cuts, we've got recruiting in a virtual environment, whatever it happens to be. The final choice you always have, or the ultimate choice you have at the end of the day, is asking, how am I actually going to show up in the face of this? How am I going to show up in the face of this, right? This is Nelson Mandela, 27 years, chipping rocks, right? 27 years in a jail cell, right? Actually gets to choose, how am I going to show up in the face of this? The most dire circumstances you could possibly imagine. And the man was more joyful and more free than the guards that guarded him, right? Literally is a choice. You can't choose what will happen out there, but you can always choose how it is you're going to show up, what you're going to say, what you're going to do, how you'll react or respond to literally anything. So earlier I shared, the pandemic, right? When the pandemic hit, we're a training company. We're a training company in a pandemic. Not a good combination, right? You look at it, it's like, not so useful, right? And so you can imagine. So I was probably a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, probably closer to a week and a half, but like a week and a half going, oh my gosh, as the reality was setting in. And there were parts, it's like, I was just, okay, it's not happening. It's sort of the denial phases of grief, denial and acceptance sort of happened at the end. But like this part where I was sitting there, I frankly was just worried about money, right? Worried about money. And, it's like we literally had 6 months of our revenue just evaporate, right? We have families depending on our company. And there were times when I was just, pretending, frankly, everything was fine. Like, okay, everything's going to be good. We're going to get through this, guys, putting on the brave face. But I would find myself, indulging in worst case scenarios. I find myself sort of nightmaring during the day, looking out the window going, oh my gosh, do I just take all the retained earnings of the company, fold the shop and go and just let everyone go and leave? Like that was actually something I thought about. Or, what do we do in this scenario? Like just really honestly, that was there. Do we continue go and risk bankruptcy? Like how long is this pandemic going to last? Am I going to, fail as a leader in being able to lead my team through this? So that was a really tough week and a half I was sort of managing and dealing with. So do we hide under the covers? Do we fold the tents? What do we actually do? And so it was in that moment, like, because I've done so much training, of course, with my coaching and stuff, and just really got to see I get to choose, right? I actually just get to choose, how am I going to show up in the face of this? And so instead of being scared and reluctant and unsure, which is how I was showing up before, I actually chose being grounded, right? Being determined and being courageous in the face of all of these circumstances. And it was in that, right, saying, okay, what would someone who's grounded do? What would someone who's courageous do in this space? And that led to going out to our customers and saying, what do you guys need? We know there's no budgets. What do you need? How can we help? And that led to the uncertainty toolkit being created and 500,000 people around the world now getting access to it. And us building new training programs. We're launching across Canada. How do people really lead in uncertain times? And we're now launching across Canada with a major bank and a major telco. That never would have happened if I'd been being scared and, nervous and unsure about who I was in the world. So ultimately, we get to choose, right, how it is we are going to show up. And so for those of you that manage teams, right, this is also a powerful question to bring to your one-on-ones with people, right? When your folks are dealing with their uncertainty in their meetings. And as leaders, you don't always have the answers, right? You don't have the answers, and sometimes it's just nothing you can actually do. Our budgets have been slashed, right? There's nothing you can do to change the circumstances. But asking this question puts them, the person you're asking to, back in the driver's seat and gives them a sense of control. So then you can get back to work together and start shifting and being courageous or whatever it is you created and start showing up in a very different way. So remember, this webinar is all about getting your power back, okay? Getting your power back. So we've got another helpful insight for you in all this, right? Another helpful insight in all this. And so this is sort of the second element around this, is that you're not alone, right? So one of this is I actually have choice, right? I have more choice, so to focus on what it is that I can actually control. There's lots of stuff you can't. And what is it that I can actually control? What are the choices I can control? That's where you want to be focusing your time. If you focus on all those other things, you're going to spin out and just not a pleasant place to be for you or the people around you. So the second side of this piece, which is really the second or sort of the fourth video in the series, is how do you shift from being actually getting your power back, is really around understanding you always have choice. Whether you're Nelson Mandela chipping away at rocks for 27 years, you always get to choose no matter what the circumstance, to then actually knowing that you're not alone. And so this might feel a little odd, it might feel a little odd to say this from what I said earlier. You know, it's most of us are now working from home. It's like, I'm alone when I look around in my office, right? But at the end of the day, you're actually not alone, right? Although it feels like and physically you are, you have colleagues all over the map, right? And frankly, your circumstances have made us to really operate in these silos, but you know, it's really easy to stay in that silo. So in fact, in challenging times as human beings, we really want to start looking at how do we get out of being a lone wolf? How do we stop just being alone and just like, I'll figure it out on my own, you know, in my office, behind my screen where nobody can see me or whatever it is. We all have a tendency to do this. And so we sit with our problems, right? Our questions, our frustrations, our projects, and we try to figure them out oftentimes on our own. And so the key element around here is that we're hardwired for control. We talked about this at the top of the conversation. And so when we do things on our own, we think it's faster, right? Especially in leadership roles that you're good at, right? You don't have to depend on anyone else. I get to feel autonomous. I have to be responsible for anyone else mucking it up or their timelines. There's no burden on other people, right? And overall, it's really less risky when you do it on your own because you have all of the control that we're looking for. So in other words, like control is really the big payoff. And so while that might work well for our, you know, sometimes called our lizard brain, right? That part of our, that most primitive part of our brain on surviving, right? But there are real impacts to being a lone wolf, especially in uncertain times. So I'm going to throw this out to you guys. So what are the impacts? Let's throw it in the chat. What are the impacts or the downsides of being a lone wolf, especially in today's times when things are so uncertain? So what are the impacts? Take a moment, throw it in the chat. What are the impacts of it? The downsides of being a lone wolf? Yeah, really clear, Sanjita. That's interesting, Terry. Missing out on great solutions. Yeah. Don't get sparked by other people's ideas or creativity. Nice, Jane. Really good. How about it's lonely, right? How about it's isolating? How about it takes longer? How about I'm just, you know, twisting in the wind on my own, right? So part of it, when we really start getting clear on it as well too, is like when we miss out on all those other things that happen, loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics that's going on right now. So when we actually stay in this space of being the lone wolf, we feed the sense of loneliness and the increased self-talk you talked about, Sanjita, which is so natural for all of us without having conversations with others that can stimulate our thinking, right? Really, really clear. So it's really, really clear. So part of it, being on our own as social animals is kind of like a recipe for, you know, yeah, it can be paralyzing if you're able to make decisions. Jane, exactly. Boom. Jane, it's brilliant. It's so good. Right. And so in the last webinar we're going to do, by the way, we're going to talk about how do we get out of the paralysis? How do we actually get unstuck and really get moving? So that's the last part of the whole webinar series and the last video. So in the video series, we'll show you. So if you don't want to wait till the next webinar, it's there in the video series. We'll share that with you later. So part of that, so with this whole thing, these are some of the impacts that we're sitting in when we're being a lone wolf. So it's faster, no one else is accountable, there's no burden to others, it's less risky. In other words, we have more control. That's really what ends up happening when we tend to be the lone wolf. So what do we do then, right? So the secret weapon, right? The secret weapon in challenging times here, and this is something we do in our career programs all the time. Like this is one of the core foundational tenets. So what we're going to do is about to unlock, you know, the secret weapon, right? One of the things that's so useful that oftentimes we discount or take really, really casually. And it's what we refer to as your inner circle. Your inner circle. So your inner circle is comprised of people around you that truly have your back. And it's often the untapped network around you that is neglected. We'll talk about that in a moment. So it's the people that you go to for new ideas. Back to some of the points, right? I don't actually get the ideas, sparking the creativity, missing out on great solutions. So it's the people you can go to for ideas, for different perspectives, being a sounding board, advice. But most of the time rather, is that we are casual with this. We are casual with this inner circle. We don't think about it, right? And working from home in a pandemic is a good reason to go, oh, you know what? I'll just like hang out. I won't have to do anything, right? But we lose touch with the support mechanisms and the people that can really are the most unique and very interesting ways that they can back us. Oftentimes we don't want to bother them, or we think we don't have enough, good enough relationship with them potentially to call them up, have a virtual coffee. We think, oh, we might be a burden on them. But guess what? I got a secret for you. Everyone is craving it just as much as you are, right? It's something we're all looking for. So now more than ever is the time to start creating, start nurturing, start leveraging relationships around you. The ones that can be the most valuable, especially when you start thinking about career and those other pieces as well. People are thirsting for connection and opportunity to be able to do that. Now is the time to start really building that network, getting support and offering support. So I think, Jane, I'm going to take, you had such a great comment, Jane, is so gracious and are grateful for what you put in there about, it's paralyzing to make decisions, right? And so when we're looking at this, when we're the lone wolf, we're the only person we're consulting with. And that means your frame of reference is limited to what you know and your past experience, your point of view, all the stuff that you guys are putting in here. So what if you could start actually expanding that? What if you could start expanding your inner circle, tapping into it as an opportunity to start expanding your thinking, expanding your level of support? So you might have already started thinking this when I started talked about the inner circle, right? You might be starting to think about, well, who are those people, right? Who are those people in your world? Who are in your inner circle? And some of you might be thinking, well, I don't really have an inner circle, right? Or maybe I've got, as my best friend and that's it, right? So those are the different places we could be. You're starting to think about it. You're not sure about it. So here's a little more definition to help you think about and be more strategic about your inner circle itself. So this is a lift from our career program. So one of the big tenets we have in our career program is not about trying to figure it out, having a crystal ball, and I've got to have some divine insight on my future. In fact, the future unfolds in conversations with people. When you think about the job you're in, it was a product of conversations you had with multiple people over time led to this opportunity. And so how can we actually start doing this more intentionally instead of accidentally? So this is something we call the inner circle matrix. So you're looking at the slide here. So you start thinking about a two-box matrix. So on the left-hand side, you've got the quality of the relationship, and then the importance to career success. Now that we have career success here, but you could put this in anything. It could be importance to your marriage success, importance to your hockey success, importance to whatever context that you think is, that you're applying this lens to. We're in the career space, so this is kind of what we have here. So the top left-hand corner, these are your close personal supporters, right? So high relationship, high quality. My mom, God bless her, is in this category. I love my mom, right? But she's also on the left-hand side of this, because as far as my career success goes, she doesn't really have much impact. I love my mom, but she's not going to help me grow my career, right? So like these are the people that you want to share with first. You have close connections with them, but may not be able to help you in your specific domain area. And then there's colleagues of convenience. So these are people, low quality of relationship, low importance. You used to bump into them, at the water cooler at work and all this kind of stuff. You probably have less interaction with them now. On the lower right-hand side is what we call your untapped gold. High potential to support in whatever context, but low quality of relationship. When I say low quality of relationship, it means they might not even know you very well, right? Like they haven't heard of you, or you saw them at a team meeting once, or whatever it is. Like it's that kind of scenario. So how can we, with our untapped gold, those people that we admire, those people that we saw give a talk, and we really loved what they did, whatever that happens to be, to reach out and approach them, right? Now, you're not going to approach them necessarily on the uncertainty piece, or maybe you are. Who knows? But starting to think about who are those people in your world that you really want to start initiating relationships with, and starting to, get into those conversations. And then the final one is what we refer to as your professional inner circle. Again, depends on the context that you're working with this. So the professional inner circle, high quality relationship, high impact to your professional success, and start to nurture those conversations. The other way to also think about these folks is to shift the nature of the conversations. Just because you have a great relationship with your boss doesn't necessarily mean you're actually going to be able to talk about your career with them or talk about something that's important to you. So it looks like our world of connections has gone off. I'm still on audio. Sanjita, can you pull up the slide? It seems like I've lost my connection.
Will do.
If you're on mute, Sanjita.
Yeah, 1 second.
This is why we have Plan Bs.
And what slide number?
We
Here.
are on the slide with the green circle, and I'll just let you know when we go to the next slide.
Yep. Can you see it?
I can't see anything on my end because I'm actually.
Oh, can someone let me know if they can see?
Sorry, guys. Sanjita, I just took back. I realized I was on mute when I kind of reconnected there. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, when I was on mute with reconnect, I don't know if you heard, I'm just going to take over this piece, and thanks for having my back. And apologies, guys, for the world of dealing with connections here, where it looks like we're locked and loaded again, which is great.
Okay.
So, yeah, thanks, Sanjita. This is always so good in having the plan B. Okay, perfect. Just loading up your chat here again so I can see this again. All right, perfect. So professional inner circle, that's where I finished off. So part of this, what happens when you, on the web series that Sanjita was talking about earlier, and then on the series for the uncertainty piece, when you subscribe, what happens is you can get a free detailed worksheet that really walks you through an exercise on how you can actually expand that network, right? So when you go to that section, it'll walk you through how to do that. But for now, I just want you to think, I'm going to give you a moment here to think of one or two names in each category. And so think of one or two names in each category when you think about your inner circle. Think about one or two names in each category in each box, and just put a little note next to it, like how many times have you connected with them, let's say in the last 6 months. So I'll just give you, 60 seconds or so to do that. I'm taking a moment. So maybe what I'll do, like right now, is like, okay, so, and then, sorry, I don't realize I didn't give you a minute. And then how many times have you connected with them in the last 6 months? About the topic that's important to you, right? So you might talk with your boss all the time, but have you talked with your boss about, your career? Have you talked with your boss about the uncertainty? How many times have you talked to them about the topic that's important to you? That should have been the question I should have asked. Well, people are already starting to throw it in the chat. And some of you have already started to put in some, okay, it's X amount of times, like once a week or whatever happens to you, which is awesome if you're talking about that topic, and that's great. It's awesome, Terry. Or less than a few times, right? So one of the things I'll sort of throw out to you, here's the question. So part of it, when we look at this, yes, thank you, Jane. Yeah, the numbers went down when you rephrased the question. Exactly, right? So that's a learning for me on this. I need to rephrase that question because we talk all the time about stuff that's not important or stuff that's not the real issue or stuff that we don't really naturally engage with people. So one of the things to think about with this inner circle is where you will often get the most value in your area are not the people that are just on the top half. The people that are on the top half are people who you have good quality relationships with, but rather where you actually get the most value in the conversations is the people that are on the right side, right? The people that can actually have greater importance in that area. I love my mom. She's not going anywhere else, not anytime soon, I hope, right? Knock on wood here. I love my mom, but in this area, she doesn't actually, lend a lot of support of no fault of her own. So starting to think about who are those people on the right-hand side of that screen of your matrix, that's where they're going to actually have the biggest impact in you starting to connect with folks about the issue that you talked about. Not that the other people aren't helpful, but the impact is going to lie with the people that have the greatest importance to whatever area of success you've taken on. So as I mentioned earlier, the discussion guides and worksheets you'll find in the toolkit will also give you some great starting lines you can begin your conversation with. So how do I actually get started in those conversations? How do I actually even engage with those people, especially those that are sort of untapped gold I haven't connected with before, to help you sort of get out of your head and get into power and sort of into those areas where things are dealing with the uncertainty. So there's a few things to keep in mind with your inner circle, just as we're coming to a close here. A few things to keep in mind with your inner circle is that you want to get out of your head, right? Get out of your head. Tapping into your networks helps keep you out of your head. And you guys put that in the chat. It was fantastic, right? Like, I don't have fresh ideas or new thinking, or I'm left to my own devices, which is always not a good thing for any of us, right? Here's the other thing I want to invite you to consider is that they want to help. So one of the distinctions I often share to my coaching practice is something called Pent Up Goodwill. So what I assert is that by you being just a great human being out there, contributing to people in whatever ways you do, is that there's goodwill. You actually create goodwill around you. And oftentimes I refer to it as pent up goodwill, like a dam, right? With all this water, it's kind of gathering behind it. I assert that there's probably a lot more pent up goodwill around you than you've tapped into. And so consider that people want to help perhaps more than you might actually consider when you start reaching out. The next one is that, lastly, is like conversations with these people is really the catalyst for growth, for change, for movement. This is where we start connecting with what's unpredictable, right? When we start getting unforeseen support, unforeseen experiences, unforeseen connections, because in the world of my head, which is a dangerous place to be and a very limited place to be, I start reaching out and connect to all those other things that are available. So here's what I'm going to have you do. We're sort of nearing the end of our time right here. So what I'd love to do is have you just, go into the chat and then what did you take away from this that you thought was most useful? What did you take away that was most useful? What part of the distinctions that you think, gosh, that part or a particular question struck you? So I'll give you a moment to do that. What did you find was most useful? And then in a moment, we'll go to any questions that you've got as well too. So give you a chance to do that.
Jamie,
Question, what distinction?
Jamie, did you get your internet back? Because my screen just froze.
I can't tell if anyone's frozen because no one's on video. So are you guys seeing the thank you and Q&A slide?
No, my screen froze at your inner circle.
Okay, how about anyone else? Can anyone else come off mute?
No, because I'm moving the slides, right?
You're stuck on your inner circle.
Yeah, that's all I can see too.
Got it. Oh, so it's interesting, right? So there's something around this whole piece that because it's showing that I'm sharing. Isn't that interesting? Right? So on my end, it says I'm actually sharing. So there's some kind of glitch. Okay, so then what slide are you guys looking at right now? Are you looking at the red and the green circle?
Yes.
The green and blue circle.
Okay, got it. So I'm actually going to stop my sharing so I can go back to, because this is kind of interesting. So you're seeing the green circle with the quality of relationships important to career success, right? That's what you guys are seeing?
Now we're just seeing you.
Now you're just seeing me. Okay, got it. Okay, so then so that's weird. Let me just try this one more time. I love technology. I love technology. Okay, are you seeing the thank you slide?
You bet.
Okay, there we go. So there's the thank you slide. So you saw the green circle. That was really the important piece for you guys. I wanted to make sure that you guys saw this element. So you saw the green circle. You're seeing it now?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is one, take a picture of this if you want. This is like a really core distinction that we find really, really super useful in lots of different contexts. And then these are the other pieces I just sort of shared at the end. So I'd ask you guys, what did you take away? What was most useful? So Lauren, thank you. No value being in the lone wolf. Penny, same thing. So we got some lone wolf folks, right? Saying, yeah, Terry, Lillian, oh my gosh, it's like, I'm not the only lone wolf out there. Look at this. What a coincidence, right? Jane, recognizing when I'm acting like a lone wolf so I can take action to break the pattern. Yeah, really, really good, guys. So all of these particular elements will show up for us. And so being a lone wolf gets us all into trouble. So connecting and using your inner circle is one of the great ways in which you can sort of start breaking out of that and connect with other folks. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go to Q&A. So we're going to open up the lines, give you guys a chance to ask any questions. Just at the bottom here, you'll also see the URL to the resource. If you haven't already, some of you were on session 1, you're already signed up for it. For those that haven't, if you just go to that URL at the bottom, and maybe Sanjita, if I could have you throw that in the chat as well too, if you could throw that in the chat, that would be great. And then you can just go over and you can sign up for that whole e-course. One of the things that happens as well too is we'll also send you a note afterwards. What typically happens in organizations, they typically want to use this across their organization, so we can arrange to have a call and get you all, if you've gone through the videos and you think it's something that's useful for your organization, we can arrange to have a call and get your organization full access, like get you all of the assets, load them up on your servers. That's what we've done with TD Bank and Royal Bank and Bell Canada and Scotia Bank, and all these great organizations are all using this for that. So if that's something of interest, we'll send you a note about that afterwards. But take a moment and sign up now if that's something you want to do. And should we open up the floor to Q&A, Sanjita, for a couple minutes? I know we have a few announcements you want to make about the next sessions as well too. But you want to do Q&A for a few moments?
Sure. If anyone has questions or comments, love to hear from you.
Yep. Feel free to come off mute. If you've got any questions, guys,
ask
let it
away.
rip.
It's all good. And the next session is March 25th from 2 to 3. And I see lots of people signed up already, so that's pretty cool. And I'll be sending out the recording tomorrow, along with the link to register and all of that.
Yeah, amazing. And then you also have, just while we're at it on announcements, you also have your women in leadership panel too, right? You want to say something about that?
Yeah, so on March 8th, International Women's Day, we have our regular Women in Leadership event from 9 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. And this is just one session, which is our panel, but we have an amazing keynote and an extra gift at the end. Intimate conversation with Heather Arthur from Rogers. And it's going to be a morning of heart-centered leaders and sharing the human experience. So tickets are available through giving a donation to either of our 2 charities. And you can get that right from our website, from GTAC.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're good.
Yeah, it's good. So any final questions, guys? We've got about 5 minutes or so. Any questions for folks? No pressure.
I think you were so thorough, Jamie. It was really good. I think there's lots to process and think about.
Yep.
Especially around being isolated and getting in your own head.
Yep.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, for all of you, just a pleasure being with you. I love how you guys just riffed in the chat and let it rip. So I hope this was useful for you. And if this was the one webinar piece that you've been on, go back and review. I know GTAC has recorded the first webinar, so they can find that on the website, I presume, Sangeeta, as well.
Yeah, we're going to be getting that posted to our YouTube channel.
Amazing. Awesome. Anything else you want to say to close, Sangeeta?
I want to thank you, Jamie. I know you're a super busy guy, impacting a lot of people. So for you to give us this time and to prepare so much to serve us, I have to say thank you so much. The feedback from our conference was amazing. After each session, like I'm reading all these nice thank yous coming in. And I know I'm going to get great feedback on this one. So thank you so much for your genuine service to us. I appreciate it.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. A pleasure. Thank you for making a difference and all the great things you're doing out there in the world. And we'll see you on webinar number 3 if you end up signing up for that.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.